from the town, and we were playing tag outside, and my brother's a year and a half older than I am, and we were running, and I fell down, and you went to catch yourself. You okay back there? I just thought when I bent over, it's probably not a good thing to do with someone with a big whoa! Out in the front pew. Oh, you're kind, thank you. And I went to catch myself as I fell, and my brother, who was right on my heels, stepped on my hand. Except he stepped on it in a way that this finger was the only one holding me. And it bent it all the way back here. And so my finger's kind of laying where it's not supposed to lay. And it's broken quite bad. And so I flop it back forward because at least it looks better. And I go in the house, I'm 8, 9 years old, and I'm crying and holding my arm, and it really, really hurts. And my sister is about 4 years older than I am, so she'd be maybe 15, 14 years of age at that time. And my dad's working in the town 30 kilometers away, and there's no hospital where we are. It's in the town 30 kilometers away. And so they have to call my dad. My dad has to come pick me up. They have to take me to the hospital. So I'm laying on the couch for about at least 45 minutes. And I have this really messed up finger. And it's just laying right beside me, as comfortable as I can get it. Now my sister, being compassionate as she is, she wanted to comfort me. And she came over. And she sat down on my hand. She says, "Are you okay?" That is a silly question. That is a silly question. I dearly love my sister to this day. She actually asked me the question, "Does it hurt?" I don't remember what my answer was. I'm sure it was quite loud though. Many times we ask silly questions because we don't know what else to say. It's because we don't know what to say. The disciples many times really didn't know what to say with this person Jesus, this teacher, this powerful miracle worker, this compassionate one. And they didn't know what to say, and sometimes the silence got to them, and they'd ask the silliest questions. And this is one of them. Who sinned that this man was born blind? Whose fault was it? His or his parents? Now, if that question was asked to me, I don't think my answer would have been as compassionate as Jesus' was. Instead of saying, "Guys, that is a stupid question," Jesus says, "No, neither one. Neither one sinned. But God has a purpose. God has a plan for the life of this blind man, sitting here for many years, begging at the court of the temple, asking people to give him money, hearing the coins drop in the cup, but never able to see who gave what, or if it's being taken out or put in, just sitting there at the mercy of people for years. Jesus said neither. God has a plan. And this man is in that plan of God. Jesus responds here to his disciples at the foolishness of their question with only kindness. God has a plan. There's something to be learned about the relationship of God here in this text. That no matter how silly or foolish we may be in our questions to God, God hears our hearts more than the question. God hears our heart. And the kindness and the compassion of Christ comes out here because of that kindness. Sometimes we humans can become very condescending in how we deal with one another. We can maybe be a better student than someone else, and we just have a tendency to tell them that. Or we can be a better cook than someone else, and we have a tendency to show them that. Or whatever it may be. But our human nature is very much leaning towards showing ourselves superior to that of someone else. But here Christ, Son of the living God, this Holy One, does not do that. To this silly question, he responds in a very kind manner. Not focusing on the silliness of the question, but rather focusing on the plan that was God's. Here we see what we call respect that God has for His people. Part of the Christian character is displayed here of God. And that's love and respecting one another. In America, yesterday was the anniversary of the tragic 9/11 terrorist attack. And I suppose you've read about it in the newspaper. I know America was following it greatly. They read the names of those who have died. And it's a very big focus in America. Really, it changed a lot of the history for America from then on. It affected really governments of the world as well then too. In the midst of this memorial time of those who died and the tragicness of terror and destruction, there was a Christian man, I'm saying that without understanding of the individual himself. He calls himself Christian. Pastor of a small church in Texas. That in this incredible day of honoring those who died and the workers that helped save those who were close to dying and comforting those who had lost, this man took it upon himself to try and do something that would shock people. And he did. He wanted to burn the Quran. He wanted to burn it. And all of a sudden the eyes of the world focused on a pastor of a small church who really lost the image and the heart of God. Because God is a God of kindness and compassion. And on a day of memory, there was no place for it. And the world cried against that one man. And I asked the question today in regards to that church, how would you feel if that was your image of Christianity? Jesus was a leader of compassion. He hated sin, but He loved sinners. Hated sin, but loved sinners. And that's the big difference right there. The questions that we ask, Jesus hears. And He responds to and He answers. Because He loves us. He created us. And He loves every single one of us. So there was a silly question. Every time I read that, I smile at myself because of what the disciples asked. And I realize I too ask so many silly questions. Here's the second thing I see in this text. Jesus has vision. He saw the man born blind. Now, I don't know about you, but I have walked through the streets of Moscow and other large cities of the world. And I have seen hundreds of beggars. And I've seen them so much, sometimes I don't even notice them. Have you experienced that? They're there. But in essence, I don't even see them. I walk around them. Sad as it may be, it's true. Because I become closed to seeing them. In Christ's day, there was no place for those with infirmities or disease or sickness or some sort of limitation to go. They only could sit on the street and beg for their existence. That was it. There were no care homes. There were no hospitals for them. They sat and they would beg. And usually they would beg around the temples. Because people going to church would always want to feel better about themselves, so they would give something to those who would beg. This man had begged there his entire life, and Jesus probably would have saw him before, but the time wasn't ready. Because God had a plan, and this was the moment for His plan, and I haven't forgot about it. There's a plan, and there's a time, and I will come back to you. I just want to see if you're awake. Jesus saw this man. You know, when I hear that statement, Jesus sees. I grew up in the church. My dad was a pastor, as you know. Most of you know. Unfortunately for me as a young boy, I heard this statement in a negative way. Be careful! Jesus will see you. Oh man, as a young teenage boy, that had a great effect on me. Everything I did, be careful. Jesus will see you. He's like, oh, where is He? You know, it affected what I did. It affected who I was with and what they did. It really affected my concept of who God was. Because I viewed God as someone who was ready in a sadistical way to whack me because I did something wrong. Ha! I got him. Did you see that? I caught him. He couldn't sneak it by me. I saw him steal that candy bar. And that's how I imaged God as a young boy. Not as compassionate Savior who died on the cross, as Andre so eloquently demonstrated this morning, died on the cross, but rather as the individual who was there to pounce on me when I did a mistake. But that was not the picture of the gospel. And that is not the picture we see here in the text that we are reading this morning. Jesus had great vision not to catch someone doing wrong, but to rather show them the mercy of God. You know, when I was young, my last prayer of the night, was, God, I ask you to forgive me of anything I've done or haven't done that I know of or don't know of. Because if I die tonight and you return in the rapture, I want to be ready to go. And I mean, it's like my closing prayer in life. Because that's your issue, but that wasn't God. God was a God of compassion. In this vision, we see that usually when you see the words, and Jesus saw, usually it's associated with something that is followed by the compassionate touch of Christ. Usually. Not always. At one time in the temple when he saw people buying and selling, he saw them, but it really wasn't compassion with which he moved from there. It was with righteous indignation. But normally, when Jesus saw the people, he had compassion on them. Like the woman at the well. This woman that has a relationship that has crumbled 5 times. And now she just gives up on it. Jesus sees the heart. And folks is there. Blind Bartimaeus is begging. Jesus sees him. The children who come around him to be blessed. He sees the children and says, such is the kingdom of heaven. Jesus always saw people, and then with that scene of people, that vision of Christ, usually it followed with great compassion. The scripture said Jesus saw a man blind from his birth, close to the temple grounds where he had just been tossed out of by those who wanted to stone him. And at this particular moment, God's time was right. And God had a plan. Even this morning, some of you are wondering where God is. And before I move on to my third part, I want to tell you God has a plan and He hasn't forgotten you. And God has a time. Don't forget that. Don't forget that. Third thing I see in this text is that the amazing miracle. Like, these lights get hot. If you want to know, they're hot. Can't wait till wintertime. It'll be pretty nice. The third part is amazing miracle. And that is where Jesus creates vision in this man's eyes. Now, even how Jesus does that is interesting to me. He doesn't just say, be healed, or open your eyes and see. He spits in the ground and mixes it with mud or dirt and then puts it in the man's eyes. And he says, go and wash in the pool